Educators and public health experts want New Zealand to follow Australia's lead and ban recreational vaping to address what they describe as a growing epidemic in young people.
There's a lot of talk about New Zealand's youth vaping rates these days. Is this good news? Does it mean that our young people are switching to vaping instead of smoking?
The fact that our young people, 14 to 15-year-olds, are giving up smoking is a wonderful story.
Or is it a sign that a new generation has become addicted to nicotine, repackaged in a sleeker, shinier, better-smelling format? And if that's the case, what might the long-term impacts be?
The study of almost 250,000 people found that people who vape had a far higher chance of getting chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is a serious incurable disease that makes breathing difficult.
Kia ora, nau mai hara mai ki te ao hurahanga. Hello and welcome to Our Changing World, ko Claire Quarantene. Today we're going to be talking about vapes. What's in them, how do they work, and do we know what the long-term impacts of vaping are? But to start, we're going to have a look at the rapid uptake of vaping among New Zealand's young people.
Our rates are among the highest in the world. So with similar countries like the UK, Australia, Canada, youth vaping in New Zealand is much higher.
This is Dr. Lucy Hardy, a research fellow in the School of Population Health at Waipapa Taumatarau, the University of Auckland. Her research focuses on vape marketing and policy, and how that impacts young people in New Zealand.
There are other people that look into how it can be beneficial for smokers, whereas I'm looking at people that don't smoke and how they've taken to it.
All right, here are the stats. From the annual Ministry of Health data for 2023 and 2024, 26.5% of 18 to 24-year-olds vape daily. So more than 1 in 4. For 15 to 17-year-olds, it's 10.5%, which is a drop on the 15.4% high of the year before. And according to the ASH, Action for Smoke Free 2025 survey, 8.7% of 14 to 15-year-olds vape daily. Thankfully, that's down from 10% in 2023 and 2024. Though vapes or e-cigarettes kind of came on the scene in the early 2010s, for New Zealand, 2018 was the start of the vaping boom.
The government sort of considered e-cigarettes or vapes at that time to be covered by our tobacco legislation, and they took a retailer to court for selling these products.
Lucy's talking about the Ministry of Health case against tobacco company Philip Morris, who were selling heats, a heated tobacco product which, instead of burning it, heats tobacco to make an aerosol that can be inhaled. The Wellington District Court dismissed the case, ruling that the product didn't come under the existing Smoke-Free Environment Act's ban on oral use tobacco products. The ministry decided not to appeal the decision.
And from that moment, we just saw a huge boom in retailer uptake. They could do almost anything with their marketing. There were really no rules about how you could sell and supply these products in New Zealand. And that was really a crucial part in the normalisation of these products in New Zealand, and is perhaps different to other countries who had sort of some kind of legislation to protect people at all times.
Nicotine-containing products that weren't made from tobacco, like vaping liquids, fell outside of regulations that control the cigarettes. They could be sold to minors. They could be used in indoor spaces. There were no minimum product safety requirements, and they weren't covered by laws prohibiting advertising, promotion, or sponsorship.
We just suddenly saw a sort of instant boom in the amount of retailers. Every sort of small town in New Zealand suddenly has this shiny new retail outlet. You can buy them online. You can buy them at the counter of your local convenience store. It'd be right next to the lollipops on the counter. There was just nothing in place to protect people. There was also a lot of very slick marketing at the time, so on social media and sponsoring of festivals, music festivals like Rhythm and Vines, all the big ones. They were really trying to position the products as lifestyle products for young people, so something that was really cool, glamorous, and a sort of aspirational product. You know, there'd be images of your laptop, your headphones, and your vape, as if it's just a normal commodity rather than a highly addictive product.
The first attempt at vaping legislation came in November 2020, which, amongst other things, bans sales to minors and use indoors. But youth vaping rates continue to rise. On the Ministry of Health website, you can see the trends for daily smoking and daily vaping since 2011, broken down by age group. And the trend for smoking looks great. It has declined across all age groups. More people are now vaping daily than smoking for those aged 15 to 44 years old. But it's the rapid rise in vaping in the younger age groups, 15 to 17 and 18 to 24, that stands out. And importantly, the increases in vaping in these age groups exceeds the decrease in smoking, meaning it's not just that people are swapping, more people are taking it up. This prompted further legislation amendments in 2021, 2023 and 2025, with new rules to try and slow the uptake by young people, such as the 2023 regulation around where new vape shops could open.
So you can't open a new vape store within 300 metres of, say, schools and other community locations. But it only applied to new stores. So when you look at the spread and the density of the stores that we already have, the market's really saturated, so it just doesn't apply to the ones that are already there, so is in effect quite meaningless.
Lucy pointed me towards a map some researchers in the University of Canterbury developed that compares school and vape store locations in July 2023. I'll link to it on the Our Changing World webpage. They found that 71% of the vape stores listed on the Specialist Vape Retailer Register are within 800 metres of a school. Close to 30% are within 400 metres. The 2023 regulations also included limits on the flavourings that could be used and how they could be named.
They didn't want retailers to market their products as cotton candy and juicy fruit and hubba bubba. So they issued a list of permitted flavours, and retailers could choose 2 of these descriptors to describe their products. But the list is so long, there's 1,500 combinations, so it's really... and a lot of those flavours are really delicious. So you've got strawberry cream, which is really a nice flavour. You can have custard and chocolate, and a lot of flavours that really do still appeal to young people.
The most recent regulations, which came into effect in June of this year, include a ban on disposable vapes, a restriction of vaping product visibility in stores and online, a ban on promotions, discounts and giveaways, and restrictions around advertising. Obviously, it's far too early to tell if they will be effective. But what Lucy has seen before and is concerned about is the rapid adaptation by companies to find workarounds.
Basically, the disposable device is really popular with young people because it's sort of an all-in-one. You buy it, you can puff it straight away. You don't have to replace anything. It's just ready to go. And so what the industry has done is just separated the battery from the rest of the device, and that technically classifies it as a pod device, which is legal. So we know that they've already adapted to this change, so I'm not sure how impactful that's going to be.
Informed by her analysis of vaping policy, Lucy believes we got the approach wrong in New Zealand.
There was so much hope that it was going to be a silver bullet for smoking that we just weren't strong enough. And when you put in something that's too weak to start with, you kind of struggle to claw anything back, whereas if you come in strong and then say if the evidence did come out that a lot of smokers were quitting, that the industry was really responsibly selling these products, then potentially you could relax those rules. But because we were already so relaxed, they were so weak, if anything, potentially people thought, oh, they're legal now, they must be safe.
And look, as far as we know to date, if it's an either-or choice, you're better off to be vaping than smoking. But remember, in this comparison, there's research that indicates smoking can kill up to 2 out of every 3 people.
So the bar there is really low.
And she's concerned about that extra cohort of young people, which she sees in her analysis, that are newly attracted to vaping.
Not only is it highly addictive, which causes a range of stresses and people treating withdrawal and feeling anxious trying to get hold of these products, but we also just don't know what the long-term damage is. And it took decades to find all the harms that came from smoking. And these products are everywhere, on every street corner, in every convenience store. And we don't know what the impact of that is going to be over the next 10 or 15, 20 years.
We don't know, but researchers are doing their best to figure this out, including Dr. Kelly Burrows of the Auckland Bioengineering Institute.
Yeah, so we've got a standard vaping device here. This is one of the tank or the mod type devices. So these are refillable, reusable vape devices.
It's a rectangular, blocky looking thing with a mouthpiece at the top. Vapes can be broken down into pods and mods. Mods, or tank devices, are the bigger of the two.
The e-liquid goes into a little canister, and then inside there'll be a heating coil. So that is when you turn the power on, that heats up to high temperatures, maybe 250, 300 degrees, and then it's in contact with the e-liquid as well as sort of a cotton wicking material, and then that heat makes that liquid turn into an aerosol, and then you breathe it in through the mouthpiece.
When you say liquid, I mean, this isn't like water with some flavouring and some nicotine.
No. So the liquids are, they're mostly made of propylene glycol and vegetable glycerol. So that's because you need these sorts of materials to be able to dissolve the nicotine and the flavourings. Yeah, so propylene glycol, vegetable glycerine, flavourings and nicotine.
Kelly's focus is on how vaping affects our lungs, which is tricky to investigate because, well, things keep changing.
I was at a conference last year and actually they likened it to a game of whack-a-mole where you sort of get all your experimental setup ready to understand how a vape affects cells or whatever. And yeah, by the time you're all ready, the product's completely changed or the devices have completely changed. So it is constantly evolving. And actually in terms of the time frame, if you think about smoking, it took at least 50 years really to understand the health effects of smoking. So vaping, we're sort of only about 20 years in, and I think it will take a while to really reach a consensus on the health effects.
Worldwide, people are doing their best to get to the bottom of it, though.
There's a lot of data coming out, so there's lots of studies that do show negative health effects from vaping, and one thing in particular is changes to the blood vessels. So that's I think quite well known that when you vape, it sort of increases your heart rate, your blood pressure, and can have changes in your blood vessels or your cardiovascular system. Another quite well-known thing is that vaping causes inflammation, which is again, it makes sense, it's your body's natural response to something foreign being inside your body. So it triggers your immune system to get rid of that substance, whatever it is. So we know those things. I mean, we know that when we're vaping, we're breathing in chemicals, a range of different chemicals, and we don't know what the long-term health effects are. I guess a lot of injury to our bodies, our body can naturally heal it, so yeah, that's the question. Will our body heal from vaping, or will it start to kind of see those long-term changes?
Kelly's been working in this space for about 4 years. In one of the first projects, her team investigated which chemicals were in New Zealand-made e-liquids and the vapour from them. To do this, they made a vaping robot.
I mean, you can buy these sorts of robots commercially, but they're sort of $10,000, $20,000. So being the Kiwis that we are, we thought we'd make our own one. So we had to make a device that where you could attach an e-cigarette, and then there are standards that sort of say what a normal puff of vapours. So you have to match the flow rates and the pressures and the humidity things. So we made this vaping device that could capture what a standard puff of vape aerosol was.
And like others, they found that the vapour, the aerosol made after heating, had different chemicals in it to the liquids.
There were heavy metals, and these were sort of linked to what the heating coil was made of, but also maybe some of the soldering material in the device itself. So some of those metals were going into the aerosol, and you also get some breakdown of those flavouring chemicals as well as the solvents.
Heavy metals accumulate in our bodies, and an excess of them can lead to organ dysfunction, particularly in the brain and liver. They also found other toxic chemicals, such as formaldehyde, a known carcinogen, in small amounts.
They're in lower concentrations than they would be in cigarette smoke. And I think one of the main conclusions that smoking is safer than vaping is the fact that there are less chemicals in vaping and less dangerous chemicals. But I think what we don't really know is how that translates to health effects. It could be just that one dangerous chemical is enough to kind of lead to those negative health effects. And actually a good example was that outbreak in 2019 in the US.
The CDC is now reporting more than 800 confirmed and probable cases of lung injury associated with using e-cigarettes. At least 12 people have died. Nearly 3/4 of the cases are men, and most patients are 18 to 34 years old. Federal health officials still don't know the cause and haven't found a product or substance linked to all cases. But most patients had a history of using vaping products containing THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana.
This happened just before the COVID-19 pandemic. By the end of this outbreak, there were well over 2,000 cases and 68 deaths. It was referred to as EVALI, e-cigarette or vaping-associated lung injury. The US Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, eventually linked it to something called vitamin E acetate, found in these THC or cannabis vapes, though about 20% of cases involved nicotine vapes. And vitamin E acetate can be found in skincare products and dietary supplements, so totally fine to ingest or rub on your arms, but it seems when inhaled, it messes with lung function.
That's banned from e-liquids now, and it shouldn't be in e-liquids. But I think that was a really interesting example that actually it could just be one chemical that can lead to negative health effects. It doesn't mean that less dangerous chemicals means it's safer.
Kelly shows me their outreach model of the lungs that they use to talk about vaping.
So we've made a sort of representation of the lungs. It's very simple. So we've got two glass tubes that sort of show the left and right lung, and we have attached an e-cigarette to the tubing so that you can sort of see what the vaping aerosol looks like and how it goes in the lung. So you can press a button to vape. So I can push that now. So you can hear the vape device working, and we can see the sort of cloudy aerosol going inside the lungs. But I think what I was mostly wanting to represent with that is the fact that, a lot of the vape aerosol you will breathe out when you exhale, but a lot of it will actually sort of stay inside your lungs. So in these tubes, actually, you can see a build-up of the e-liquid inside the lungs. And when that's going into your body, that's what your sort of immune system or your body will need to actually clear out and get rid of.
This is what Marzia Agababai is researching for her PhD in Kelly's group. Her first step was to model where the aerosol particles end up in the lung, depending on the particle size and the way someone vapes. Because there's kind of two ways. There's mouth to lung, so you breathe in the aerosol, hold it in your mouth, and then take it into your lung, or direct to lung, using the mod or tank device that Kelly showed me.
So for the whole 2 or 3 seconds, it's like that. They inhale directly to the lung. So when someone using these devices, the deposition in the airways is much higher than mouth to lung, and they're going deep into the lung.
With her modelling, Marzia worked out how much aerosol is making it to the cells that line the inside of the lung, where the particles can get stuck.
When they go deep inside the lung, there's no way out for them, and they accumulate there.
Then she used the modelling results to design an experiment where some lung cells in a dish vaped for half an hour, with a realistic amount of aerosol. The vaping regime went a puff of aerosol, then 2 breaths of air, then another puff of aerosol, for a total of 60 puffs in 30 minutes. She tested a range of conditions: just air, then the basic vaping liquid with nicotine, with flavour, with nicotine and flavour, and with nicotine salt. Marzia left the lung cells in the lab for another 24 hours, and then she investigated them for signs that they were stressed or dying or showing markers of inflammation.
I found that these cells have started to die, and also the barrier integrity has been disrupted. After vaping, they have lost some of their proteins that link them together, and I found that the cells started to secrete inflammatory biomarkers. It means that it increased the inflammation in the cells.
And while she saw worse effects for the aerosol with nicotine salts and with nicotine and flavour, she did see some of the effects on inflammation and the barrier integrity for the basic vaping liquid alone, that propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin mix. And look, these are just lung cells in a dish, but it's the long-term changes that researchers are concerned about. If someone vapes several times a day across many years, will that constant bombardment on the lung cells cause troubles like inflammation, cell death and fluid buildup in the lung, resulting in diseases similar to those we see in smoking? Kelly is working on this next, recruiting vaping participants, taking CT scans of their lungs and using these images, along with sputum, essentially spit from the lung, to see whether they can detect early changes similar to those seen in smokers who get lung diseases. But as to whether these diseases are definitely in vapors' futures, we can't tell yet, says Kelly.
There haven't yet been people with lung cancer or COPD or emphysema from vaping, and that's not to say that it won't happen, because those sorts of diseases happen in people sort of over 50 years old. And so I'd say there's probably no one who's vaped yet from a teenager to 50. They just haven't been around long enough. So I just don't think we can answer that.
Have you ever tried it?
I have tried it, and that's why I realised the flavourings, it tastes so nice. And I've got young children, and when we used to walk past someone who vaped, they would always say, "Oh, yum, that smells good." Whereas a cigarette, I would never want to have a puff of a cigarette because that tastes gross, and it leaves the smell on you. Whereas vaping is just, I get it.
Yeah, right. And what age are your kids? Are you
I've got 10-year-old twins and a 12-year-old. Yeah, so this was from when they were a lot younger. They used to say that. Now they know about my research, and when they see someone vaping now, they're like, "Oh my God, that person's vaping." But I say to them, you'll probably try vaping, and that's okay if you try it. But I think the real damaging thing is the addiction with nicotine that I'm hearing, anecdotally of young people just becoming so addicted to it.
So young people have also described impacts on their mental health.
This is Lani Teddy.
I come from Tauranga Moana, so I am Ngāti Ranginui and Ngaitirangi. I'm a research fellow at the University of Otago, which is based at the Wellington campus.
Lani works in qualitative research with the Aspire Research Group, focusing on projects that ask young people what their lived experiences of vaping are.
For some young people, they realise that they can't stop when they want to, and that then creates other feelings about shame or embarrassment. So young people have talked about being addicted to a device or addicted to flavoured air, and they've thought about how they are viewed by other people because of their vaping. So for some young people, this has interrupted relationships that they have with their peers or with their family. And beyond that, some have described financial impacts. People have talked about connections to community, so thoughts on their sort of environment, thoughts on retailers selling to people who are underage. Young people have questions too around why there are so many vape stores in some communities as opposed to others. And then young people also have had opinions and thoughts about marketing and availability, so very aware of how hard companies work to make these products look and sound really appealing.
And she's recently been learning about some of the wider impacts.
So we have a new research project called Te Hao Ho. So that's a 3-year HRC-funded project where we are working quite closely with secondary schools. And in our conversations with principals and teachers, some of the things that have been raised are that they are seeing young people who are addicted in their classrooms, and so addicted that they're vaping in class. So from the perspective of teachers and principals, attendance is being impacted, the ability to focus and concentrate's not there, so learning is being impacted. They're experiencing issues like students stealing vapes or, social supply, so where people are buying vapes for those who are underage. Got students starting at a really young age as well. So it's been reported to us that even though our study is based in secondary schools, we're hearing that young people are coming from intermediate already using vapes. And we hear about young people not using bathrooms at school because they are being used by people who vape. So in that scenario, even if you don't use vapes, you are still being impacted by them. So there's lots of different ways that this product or these nicotine products can impact on people.
It's early days for the project, but she's hoping it will give a voice to young people, especially rangatahi Māori, whose stats say are more than twice as likely to vape as their non-Māori peers.
The name of the project, Te Hauhau, it comes from a whakatauki or proverb, ka pū te ruha, ka hau te rangatahi. So that translates as when the old net is cast aside, the new net goes fishing, which really speaks to intergenerational shifts in leadership. It grew out of a concern from among our research and community partners, not just around the number of young people who are vaping, but this very broad range of impacts that it is having on them. And the recognition too that rangatahi voices, like the voices of young people, have largely been absent from policy or decision-making processes around these products. So when we have conversations with people, often it's dominated by adult perspectives, and they may frame nicotine harm in ways that are very different from the way a young person might talk about that. And again, that might be very different from the way a Māori person might talk about harm or even about hauora, like what does it mean to be truly well. And I guess a question I've always had is if a rangatahi could design policies around vaping and nicotine for their future that reflected their aspirations, then what would that look like?
So where does this leave us? New Zealand's youth vaping rates are high. There are recent hints in age groups below 18 of a downwards trend, which hopefully will continue. Research suggests our lungs are not designed to inhale heated chemical-containing aerosols, so long-term use might lead to problems. Plus, nicotine addiction is no joke. If you've never smoked or vaped, then the best thing to do is to not start, no matter how tempting the flavours, or how many videos you see of people looking cute with their vape on social media. With her research on the marketing side of things, Dr. Lucy Hardy can't help but see parallels between tobacco advertising of yesteryear and the campaigns of today.
The tobacco industry was the original designer of the influencer marketing, so they really wanted to tap into the women's market. And so what they did was they paid this beautiful model and others to march in a feminist rally smoking. And that was the way to target young people, young women specifically, and they're doing the similar things with vaping now.
But, she says, it also means we've got the blueprint of what needs to happen to reduce vaping rates.
We've done this already with tobacco in New Zealand really effectively. So you can increase prices, you can hide the products from view, you can ban flavours. There's a whole range of things that we've already done really effectively to reduce smoking that can be rolled out for exactly this device, and we should do it. The problem is that the argument is always that we shouldn't be unduly regulating a product which isn't as harmful as smoking. But the real question is, well, who is it less harmful for? And if you're not a smoker and you start vaping, then that is much more harmful than breathing air.
Thanks to Dr. Lucy Hardy of the University of Auckland, Dr. Kelly Burrows and Marzia Agababai of the Auckland Bioengineering Institute, and Lani Teddy of Aspire Aotearoa and the University of Otago. This episode was produced by me, Claire Kincannon, production help was from Ellen Rikers, and sound engineering was by Mark Chesterman. You can find more information and pictures on our webpage at rnz.co.nz/OCW. And if you have feedback or questions, please email us at ourchangingworlds@rnz.co.nz. Tēnā koe I whakaronga mai. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Claire Kincannon. Have a great week. Kia pai, te wiki.